The best of the rest. The Browns' search for a new head coach continues.
That's right. In the last episode, we talked about some of the names. They've already been interviewed for the most part. In this episode, we're going to continue with some names that the Browns are interested in, with some names that we're frankly throwing out there that we think are interesting ourselves. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and leave a comment down below. Did we miss somebody? Is there a coach out there that you think deserves a nod after that absolute belt to ass loss last night? One Pittsburgh Steelers head coach, Mike Tomlin, could be in the conversation soon. Time will tell on that one.
Time will tell indeed, and it is a very interesting landscape with how many coaches have been fired in the NFL. Like Erik alluded to, make sure you check out yesterday's video. We talked about a plethora of these coaches. This is kind of a part one, part two kind of series we got going on, and I really want to get into the names that we have today. Some of the names that the Browns have yet to interview or have yet to even request to have interviewed, but our names floating around the NFL sphere nonetheless. And Erik, why don't we jump in with some long shots for lack of a better term?
Interesting that you say long shot. Let's jump in indeed because I felt like there was a lot more experience in this group of names that we have here compared to yesterday. But yeah, let's jump right in, starting with one Kliff Kingsbury. He has head coaching experience last time with Arizona Cardinals. An interesting couple of years there. Right now, though, he is the Commanders' offensive coordinator. What do you think of Kliff, Noah?
I'm not a huge fan of him. I think he is a lot of hype because he's an offensive mind, and that's the popular way to go about getting your new head coach in the NFL. Cliff was kind of let go from the coordinators. I felt like it was more of a amicable split, for lack of a better term, but he is not going to be returning regardless what happens in this head coaching search to the Commanders. So that's an interesting note. His record as, of course, the Arizona Cardinals head coach is not that great. We're looking at 28, 37, and 1. He was brought in kind of to
Mm.
jive what was going on with a Kyler Murray being brought in. I've never been a huge fan of him. He was iffy in college too when he was the coach of Texas Tech. There's so many different things here for me where I'm just okay on him. I don't hate him. I wouldn't be upset like some of the other names on this list on today's episode, but he's just okay to me.
Yeah, interesting that you say that you're not really high on his head coaching career. I want to break that down just for a minute because, for all intents and purposes, I think he was turning the Cardinals around. 2019, he went 5-10. The next year, he went 8-8. The year after that, he went 11-6. Yes, his final year as head coach was 4-13. But if you recall in that 2022 season, there were a lot of season-ending injuries that played a part in that, and I wouldn't necessarily leave it at his feet. But he was in the playoffs just the year before. Obviously, there was a lot of drama with Kyler Murray, a lot of off-field drama, deleting all mentions of the Cardinals and like Instagram, things like that, like stupid stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know if 4 years. I mean, his head coaching record is not all too different from Kevin Stefanski, who's had more time. I don't know. I don't hate Cliff. I don't
I
think he's the right fit, by the way, but I'm not a hater.
I don't like comparing a guy to the guy we just fired, by the way. So
That's fair.
saying Kevin Stefanski got more time does nothing for me.
Well, you
I
defended
just
him for 4.5 out of 5 years, so
well, right, because there was reason to believe that, but sometimes your time runs out in this league, as we've seen with plenty of coaches in this coaching cycle that have either been fired or are now on the open market. Cliff, to me, is an interesting one because he's viewed as such a bright young offensive mind. I've heard people of all different types of backgrounds, more of the sports nerd, the football nerd, like this kind of guy. I've heard some of the analytical types like this guy. He's going to be a popular name out there to be the head coach somewhere. I just don't know if I love him here. I do love his offensive concepts and how they are more quarterback friendly and less shoving a guy into a robotic mode like a Mike McDaniel or Kevin Stefanski in years past here in Cleveland. So it's not my least favorite in the world, but he's definitely not my favorite in today's video.
no, that's fair. I will say though that 2024 Commanders' offense looked pretty good.
Yes, it did, and it would have looked a lot better if it wasn't for, again, injuries this year. You want to move over to Clint Kubiak because I feel very strongly about Clint Kubiak.
I do wanna move over to Clint Kubiak, but I'm curious, I wanna hear your thoughts because very strongly is interesting to me.
Yeah, very strongly against him. It is Kevin Stefanski 2.0. They are from the same coaching tree. I understand that the Seahawks offense has looked awesome this year, thanks to Sam Darnold, thanks to Jackson Smith and Jigba. I'm all the way good on it. It is Kevin Stefanski 2.0. It would be like bringing the same guy in. I'm all the way good on it. I'm on to Joe Brady. You can give whatever else you want to say about Clint Kubiak. I am slamming the door shut on this one right now. I will not have a discussion with you about it.
No, I don't disagree. You know, the more that we have these conversations, the more that I'm a massive believer in bringing in somebody with head coaching experience. I don't think we can bring in an up and comer as much as I want to hit on the next Sean McVay. I'm just not a believer in that for this Browns team at the moment. They need
Not
calm
right
and
now,
steady
no.
leadership. And Clint Kubiak very well could go on to be a fantastic head coach. I'm not going to knock him at all, but it's just not right. There are guys that are really good for, if Clint Kubiak went somewhere, Seattle's a decent example. Somebody that already has a decent team, a decent record, and for some reason they're moving on. Maybe the Ravens is a good example here. I think he could probably flourish. But for a team that needs to really find its grit and its soul and answer a lot of questions and needs a coach that is not afraid to get dirty and really tell players how it is and lean on that head coaching experience and that leadership, I just don't think he's the guy. Let's
I
move
don't
on
think
to Joe Brady, though.
Yeah, let's move on to Joe Brady because I think Joe Brady, out of the three young offensive minds that we're talking about here on this page, he's the most enticing. He is super young. I want to highlight that he was Josh Allen's QB coach for a while. Then he was the offensive coordinator in the Bills. Anytime you talk about one of these top NFL franchises, or at least perceived to be, the Bills have been very good for a very long time, despite not winning it all yet. And you're talking about a reigning MVP as of right now, one of the, if not the best quarterback in the league in Josh Allen. Of course, it's a little bit enticing. I think this is like out of the three we're looking at, I'm the most more for, I guess, but
Really?
I'm still just like good on all three of the names through and through.
That's interesting to me, Noah, because just 10 years ago in 2016, I was in corporate America. I had started my career. It's not that long ago, right? And Joe Brady was a grad assistant for Penn State. So young, not enough experience. The Bills do have one of the better teams, one of the better offenses in the NFL. They had the rushing leader this year. And they do more with less. I'm not sure how many Bills games you watch, but they don't exactly have wide receiver depth right now.
Correct.
So yeah, they look good, but he's just not there yet. Let's see his career in maybe 10 years' time, but way too young and way too sophomore for me.
That's totally fair. Like I said before I got into this, I would pass on all three of these guys. Honestly, I would just I'm looking for more experience. That's where I'm at. I'm looking for more of a background, and the experience part of it doesn't need to be just in the NFL. Like if that was like a six, but they've been in college for 8 years in terms of experience as well, I'm totally fine with that. I like Joe Brady for the fact that he could be the home run hit of signing people just because he has a little bit more unknown and he has some strong backing in terms of what he's been able to do with that Bills offense to make it more explosive, make it more fun. I don't know how else to really describe it. And he has a focus on the pass game, of course, which is something I think we desperately need help with in Cleveland. We've been so run focused for years upon years, and Kevin Stefanski's scheme, having a true pass focused guy, whether that be at head coach or offensive coordinator, is something I'm personally looking for.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And let's move on to probably the most experienced graphic that we're going to have on the screen. All three have had coaching experience. We'll start with Matt Nagy, who was most recently head coach for the Bears. He's now the Chiefs offensive coordinator. I'm curious your take here. I will say that he has a lot of experience, a lot of NFL experience. He's never bounced around college, etc. It's all been NFL. I felt like his first tenure as Bears head coach, it kind of was that factor that we've been talking about with the previous guys, in that he wasn't really experienced. He had 1 year of offensive coordinator experience, went into that head coaching role. Now, though, he has quite a bit more, being back at Kansas City. He's been OC there for 3 years. What's your take on Matt Nagy?
Matt Nagy is actually a name I liked a lot more than I thought I was going to coming into this head coaching search, because I think right away about that Bears team and how they I mean, they're the Bears, just like we're the Browns, right? So you think a name tethered to that, maybe it's a little poor. He was the head coach when they made that playoff run, despite the doink and all of that stuff that happened. Understanding and learning and working with Andy Reid is something
Yeah,
enticing to me. Having that former head coaching experience, having time to sit back, reflect on it, and then go back and get a head coaching job is something really interesting to me. I really hope the Browns bring him in for an interview and we can see what he can bring. He checks the box of being an offensive mind, which is, the trend of head coaches and head coach hirings in the NFL. He's someone I actually genuinely could see being a good fit for us. I don't remember about his personality as much, if he's a rah-rah guy. Not that that matters to me as much as it does to some other Browns fans, yourself included at times. Um,
definitely.
but to me, I think it would be a solid hire. I think my judgment is so clouded because the Harbaugh name is in this coaching cycle right now, and I think we're both so attracted to throwing whatever we can to bring John Harbaugh into Cleveland. But this would be another solid hire, in my opinion. And I think it would get me relatively excited and feel good about, the prospect of things to come.
Yeah, I mean, he checks the box of experience. Here's what I don't like. I'll say what I do like, which is exactly what you said. Learning under Andy Reid, I think, is nothing but a positive. There's a big difference though in learning under Andy Reid at where he's at, obviously in Kansas City. They have one Patrick Mahomes. We do not have one Patrick Mahomes. And that is a glaring difference. It worries me a little bit that the bulk of his real NFL experience outside of the Bears is as OC of the Chiefs. He kind of went back to that after leaving, or being ousted, I should say, from Chicago. So it worries me a little bit that he hasn't had multiple stops at OC, et cetera, that kind of experience with different cultures. I think the culture where he's at is a very good one, but I'm just not sure. Like, I don't think he'd be a terrible hire, but he's certainly not my favorite pick, and not top 3 or 4, maybe even 5 for me.
He climbs a little bit for me, and you talk about the culture and the comparison between the Chiefs and the Browns, but you bring in a guy like him to hope to instill that culture in your team. He also, the Chiefs have had some characters there in terms of, literally the term character flaws,
Yeah, right.
which is something Andrew Barry likes to bring in sometimes. So he has some experience dealing with that. You think about the fact that he's dealt with an organization that's thought of poorly with the Chicago Bears. He has some background in that. That's some of the stuff that I like about him. And I know we're gonna do Brian Flores last, but that is another thing I like about Brian Flores, is because Miami was very dysfunctional when he was there, and he was able to maneuver that situation. So to me, being able to deal with dysfunction, I think does give him some positives, some checks in the books, some A pluses from me.
Before we touch on Flores, though, of course, we have to go to Mike McCarthy, not currently employed, but arguably of all of the head coaches out there, maybe the one with the most experience. Obviously, John Harbaugh has a lot as well. Mike McCarthy has made some TV appearances. He's on McAfee quite a bit. And honestly, that's where I've learned to like him the most, not necessarily from his coaching. He does have a pretty decent coaching record, 174, 112, and 2. It's positive. A lot of experience there that comes from both Green Bay and the Cowboys as head coach. Good age range, a lot of experience. However, He didn't do much as Cowboys head coach, and obviously he had quite a stellar quarterback in Green Bay. So, what's your take on Mike McCarthy here?
Yeah, I'm good. I just think that he is like the retread everyone goes back to every couple years at this point. I know that I'm saying that, and it's only happened once with the Cowboys, but he got moved on from the Cowboys. I think his time as like this big name in the NFL is kind of up. He just doesn't do it for me. I don't think bringing him in would do much of anything in terms of the modern NFL game. He just doesn't do it for me, man. It just doesn't scratch the itch despite his previous success, despite his experience. He's on the older side as well. So that could prove to be, not a long-term fix at this coach solution. That is a question mark and a concern I've seen out there as well. He just doesn't do it for me, if I'm being honest. But are you higher on him?
Yeah, from the experience from that CEO perspective, talking about what we need, he was head coach of Green Bay for like 13 years, Cowboys for 5. That is not. I mean, I don't think we should poo-poo that and what that kind of requisite experience brings to the table. We don't need him to be an offensive genius here. That's not what we're looking for. We're not looking for that young offensive mind. I mean, we wouldn't mind it. I like Mike McDaniel, like we talked about in the last episode. Check that out. But that's not necessarily what we want. We want that leader. And I think you can have that with Mike McCarthy. He's obviously dealt with very big personalities at his time at both the Cowboys and the Packers. And then one plus on him with the Cowboys, he's dealt with interesting leadership. Obviously, it didn't work out at the Cowboys, but knowing how to kind of walk that tiptoe around big leadership, I think is a plus. For the most part, I think he's had a very successful career. I get where you're coming from. It feels like a retread, but why wouldn't you say the same thing about John Harbaugh? Mike McCarthy's also a Super Bowl winning coach. I mean, you can say very similar things about the two of them. um so interesting. Maybe you think he had plenty of talent down in Dallas, and didn't get the job in there. I kind of disagree, but yeah, I'm higher on McCarthy, honestly.
I think that's part of it. I think he was brought into Dallas to really right the ship, turn it around, get him on a direction to go further, and they didn't, and that's why he got fired. He didn't
They
do
went
anything.
12-5 for 3 straight years. I mean, I would be ecstatic if the Browns went 12-5.
I know, but the goal isn't to go 12-5. The goal is to win a championship, Eric, and
But
and
did they have a
that's
roster to do that? Let's be honest. Let's call a spade a spade. They're also in the division with the Eagles, who have been very good for years now. I don't know if he was dealt the right hand to win a Super Bowl in Dallas.
right. And then what hand is he getting dealt in Cleveland? Listen, I think all of the boxes that we've talked about on today's episode and yesterday's episode have been checked with Mike McCarthy. I don't know what it is for me that is, no, I'm good. It's a gut feeling. It's just where I'm at. I just don't feel good about the prospect of him coming in here and doing things. He went to Dallas. He ended up not getting a long-term stint with Dallas. But it is to note too, we were kind of in the sweepstakes for him the first time around as well. I believe we gave him an interview, so maybe he will pop up later on down the line. I know he's starting to get a couple interviews now, but it feels like at the time of recording, at least, of course, the head coaching market is at a freeze until Harbaugh makes a move.
No, that is a fair take. I guess what it breaks down to for me is what has he done when he's had the talent? And he has winning seasons and playoff experiences when he has the talent. I don't think that any coach is going to come into this Browns organization and do what has been done with the Patriots this year, for example, because we're just not quite there yet. I think that we can make movement into the right direction. But anybody watching this or expecting miracles, even if we hire John Harbaugh, I mean, we could bring back Madden back to life, or Lombardi back to life. It's not going to make this Browns team a Super Bowl contender. That is still going to take years of work.
Yeah, that's potential. Well, I don't know if years of work. We've talked a little bit about how far the Browns are away. Maybe that's a video that we need to sit down and talk about and flesh out once we get through all these head coaching candidates and the head
Yeah.
coaching talk because I don't know if I 100% agree, but we will get to that in another video. So make sure you subscribe, stay tuned because we will be talking all things Browns all off season, giving you all the coverage you need. Brian
You know
Flores,
what?
Eric. Oh,
I do
oh,
wanna
oh.
have that video actually, but yeah, let's move on to Brian Flores. I'm a little disappointed that, at least to my knowledge, I have not heard the Browns linked with him or interviewing him or interest in him whatsoever. That's disappointing to me because Brian Flores is one that is higher on my list, to be honest. The only thing that I don't like about Flores is he is a defensive minded coach. And I know the Browns are trying to obviously keep Schwartz as much as possible. That may not be possible. The Ravens just interviewed him, but Flores is a guy that kind of got the shaft as with his head coaching experience. But when we talk about leader of men, he checks that box for sure.
Yeah, he does. We've talked at length on the show already about how much we like Brian Flores as a candidate. He was the first name we were throwing out as the rumblings of Kevin Stefanski getting fired were out there as the season was winding down. Brian Flores to me would be a great hire. He's dealt with and stood up against dysfunction and ownership meddling in his previous stint as the head coach of the Dolphins. He had very strong opinions against Tua. It seems that he is true and correct in that opinion now. So there's a lot of things to like here. Yes, the defensive mind thing to me, to a lot of people, is a turn off or a negative, but it doesn't matter to me at the end of the day because if you can be a CEO, you can fit that archetype that we need here in Cleveland. Let your coordinators and bring in coordinators that can do good things for your offense and move your offense and your defense in the proper direction. Whether that means bringing back a Jim Schwartz, whether that means bringing in a guy like some of the younger names that have been interviewed early on in this head coaching search for the Browns. There's a lot of ways this can shake out, and a guy like Brian Flores, to me, I think would be an awesome hiring, and I think a lot of fans would be happy about it.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. He comes from that Bill Belichick coaching tree, by the way. That said, let's point to the negative for a second. According to ownership, and there is dysfunction in Miami, don't get me wrong, but according to ownership down there, it was his lack of collaboration. He couldn't develop an offense at all, and I know that isn't necessarily on him, but it is. He's head coach, but
Right.
lack of collaboration, internal conflicts knowing our structure, our GM, our owner, that could be quite the downside to a coach coming in.
Yeah, it could be too, and maybe that's a turn off for this front office. Maybe it's some of the lawsuit stuff that happened with Brian Flores. It's to note too, Brian Flores' defensive scheme doesn't fit what we have going on for the Browns too, so that is a negative against him. He's more of a 3-4 guy as opposed to a 4-3 guy like we like to run here, and our defense is better suited for what we're running here. Not saying that he can't adapt, and
Yeah.
that should be something to note and focus on with any candidate. I was super high on him early on into this process, and by early on, I mean before we even fired our coach. There's other names out there that attract me more aside from just the Harbaughs, but if we went out and got a Brian Flores, I don't think anybody would be complaining because I think he's thought of pretty highly in terms of at least the fandom of the NFL.
My biggest downside to Brian Flores is the reports that he and Tua didn't get along, along with other players. And I bring that up only because, right or wrong about how he felt about the talent of Tua, the fact that he couldn't get along and adapt to his players, that's an issue for me. Especially as we obviously we have personalities on our team as well. You got to come in and be able to coach and adapt your coaching style to the players that you have. So I take a little bit of issue with that. I mean, I would be a hypocrite if I didn't when I talk about Kevin Stefanski, playing the same games, and that irritated me all season. I don't like that side, and maybe that's been fixed in these interim years since he was at Miami. But hearing that and some of the things in the media, I don't like that.
No, neither do I. It's kind of funny sitting here and talking about it with you in real time. I've kind of moved, and I'm not saying up highly, but I've moved Mike McCarthy up a little bit, and I feel like I've moved Brian Flores down a little bit because of some of the red flags and the warning signs. There's so many good names, I think, that are actually in this coaching cycle
Yeah.
that maybe people aren't talking about as much as we are in videos like this because they're not big names. And I think we mentioned a few in the last one. In the next slide, we're going to mention two that I really like. Um, so to me, there's a lot going on here. And Brian Flores, while he is a big name candidate, I don't know if he really is the right fit for the Browns. The more and more I sit here and talk to you about it, Eric.
No, that's fair, and that's kind of why we're going through this exercise. Let's move on though, because the next guy on my list is higher than I thought he would be, honestly. And the reason for that is I really don't want a defensive coach, but I think I need to get out of that mindset. I'm so fixated on Schwartz and what he's done with our defense that I'm like, nope, don't need that. We're just going to keep him in place. But I don't think we should be thinking that way. Robert Saleh, he has experience. He has the fire that I like. If you watch that playoff game, he puts together very good defenses as well. But he has that kind of passion that I've talked about lacking from Kevin Stefanski for many years now. He's the exact opposite of that. And by the way, I don't think this is super important for a head coach. But look at him. I don't mind a guy that clearly, like, he looks like he can kick some of his players' ass. There's something to be said about the motivation side of that, just in my opinion. What's your take on Salah though? Obviously, he was with the Jets and not a great tenure there, but who would have a great tenure with the Jets?
Yeah, I love Robert Saleh as a potential option for the Cleveland Browns. I think he got a little bit of the short end of the stick with the Jets. If you look at what the Niners defense is doing right now with all the injuries across the board, that gets you excited. The way players want to play for him, that gets you excited. He is touted as one of the best defensive minds in football. So bringing him in to, lead a Miles Garrett led defense and then bring in some offensive support on the other side of the ball, that gets you excited. There's a lot of things to like here. He's dealt with an organization like ours in the Jets, and I think we're in a better spot now than he was with the Jets then, and we're in a better spot now than the Jets are now as well, honestly, just because of the talent we have on our roster. So to me, Robert Saleh is really one of my top coordinator names out there right now. He is a very, very, very attractive option for me. We'll see if we end up getting to interview him or not. It depends how far the 49ers go. Of course, we're not allowed to even request the interview right now, or we might be able to request it, but we can't really do anything about it until the 49ers get eliminated or win a Super Bowl, which I don't think is going to happen this year, unfortunately for them. But I am really high on Robert Saleh. I think he is probably in that top 3 to 5 category for me. I won't lie.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. To know it can be requested because the Dolphins just requested to interview him for their head coaching position. I agree, though, 100%. He is certainly in my top five. I think he'd be an excellent candidate. That Jets organization is a mess, obviously, but for 2 straight years, he went 7-10. And honestly, what he was dealing with, I think that's a win. I think his leash was a lot shorter than it should have been over there. If we just think of the whole Aaron Rodgers situation and getting hurt on the first play, like, there was a lot that went into what he saw and had to deal with as coach of the Jets. So I do think he got the short end of that stick, but he's top 5 on my list, certainly.
Yeah, I would feel strongly about this hiring, of course, depending on what other dominoes fall if we don't end up with Harbaugh or whatnot. I think he is a really attractive name, and I think he could be a really fun coach and a really warm, different feeling for us Cleveland Browns fans and media members, everybody, because he is not the same guy as Kevin Stefanski whatsoever.
No, not at all. Let's move on to Chris Shula. Um, Apart from his last name, which is a very famous one in the NFL, of course, we're referring to Don Shula, who I believe is his grandfather, and Mike Shula, who's his uncle. Uh, that's about it for this guy. It's too young, lack of experience, only 2 years at DC. Again, it could be a name that in the future we circle back to in 10, 12 years' time and we're talking about him. Obviously, I think there is something to be said growing up with some of those guys. family lineage. Hall of Fame coaching, I think just being around that as a kid, he probably learned a lot, don't get me wrong. I do like too that part of his career, he was a defensive coordinator for John Carroll. Obviously, there's Ohio roots here. That's just kinda cool, but that's about it. Not a real contender here at all.
Well, I would give you a little bit of pushback because he is a Sean McVay guy, and Sean McVay is thought of very highly. He played football with Sean McVay at Miami of Ohio. He was one of the guys that McVay said, once I get this going, I'm going to bring you along with me. And he has brought him along with him. And to have that kind of rub from such a big name in the NFL, I think is very, very enticing. I think it'll be an interesting one to see if he ends up landing anywhere. Will that be the case? I don't know. I think you are correct in the idea that maybe this isn't his year. Maybe this is him starting to get into the hopper and he'll be one of those ones from this coaching tree, this McVay coaching tree that pops up later on. But he is an interesting option if you want to try to swing young, swing for the fences, bring a guy in who knows what's going on with, the top of the top, the cream of the crop talent in the Rams and Sean McVay. But he's not super high on my list by any means. But I do think he deserves a little bit more credibility than thank you next.
Um, yeah, I mean, they're 10th in points allowed. That's not too shabby, especially considering if I'm not mistaken, they were first in points gained themselves. So that's a pretty good combination there for the Rams. I don't know. I think I get what you're saying, but the again, going back to it's no different from the guys that we said didn't have enough experience. We need a leader with experience. There's no difference. I'd be a hypocrite if I changed my take here.
Yeah,
And
that's
and
that's
and McVay is so highly touted, by the way, because of his offensive mind. And I'm not saying that again, Shula could be a very good candidate down the road. I just don't look at him and his experience and say, "Yep, that's the guy that makes this team better."
that's totally fair. I want to move on to the next guy because the next guy to me, Eric, if you are going to go young, if you are going to go with a guy that doesn't have a ton of experience in terms of, head coaching, all of the stuff that we're talking about, Jeff Hafley to me, I think could be a really, really fun head coaching hire for the Cleveland Browns. Can I tell you why?
Sure. Is it because he worked at Ohio State?
Well, he does have some background there. He's actually been around Cleveland as well before. He's been in the Browns
Yep.
organization. He's actually known to have enjoyed his time here in Cleveland, and that was during some of the dysfunctional years. He's touted to be the complete opposite of one Kevin Stefanski. He will tell you how it is. He will be emotional. He will be all the things we liked about Robert Saleh. So there's a lot of things to like about Jeff Hafley if you were trying to go out there and get the next big thing. If you are going for that home run, I think he has the ability to do so despite being on the defensive side of the ball instead of the offensive side of the ball. He's a candidate that really does truly excite me and would be fun if we end up going to the home run, lesser known kind of route, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. I still have the same issues with the lack of experience there. It should note that he does have head coaching experience at the college level. He spent 4 years as head coach of Boston College before coming back to the NFL 2 years ago, and he's been DC at Green Bay ever since. I like who he's worked for. He's worked for Chip Kelly. He's worked for Matt LaFleur, Mike Pettin, Greg Schiano, Kyle Shanahan. If he soaked in some of those better names on that list, then I think he could certainly have that desire and that lack of a better word. I'm flailing here a little bit. But as a head coach, if he soaks some of that experience up, but again, I just think the lack of experience here. I get what you're saying. If we went younger, if we decided to flip it on its head from all intents and purposes, what it appears the Browns are searching for, then he could be a good hire. I'm just not sold on us doing that, and I don't think you are either.
I see he is I think honestly top 5 for me in terms of like being the one
Interesting.
young one young non-retread option that's on here in my candidates list. Like if we go the route where we're not taking a guy like Saleh in, or we're not taking a guy like Matt Nagy in, we're not taking a guy like even Jim Schwartz in, whatever, he would be the guy I would go after. And I'm not saying Jim Schwartz is even in my top five, because if you watch yesterday's video, and you totally should, if you haven't clicked over there and watched it yet, it'll be at the end of this video. Schwartz is not top five for me, but if we don't go that retread option, I think he has the background, the skill set, some previous head coaching experience, despite it not being at the NFL level, that excites you and it entices you. And I think he could be a really fun candidate for us, and a really fun up and coming young in terms of the NFL coaching sphere name to come in here and really put some stuff together and really make the culture here just flip.
Well, you keep alluding to it, so let's just do it. I want to hear, and I'll do it as well, but I want to hear your top five out of everybody we discussed yesterday and today. Give me roughly in order of who you like the most to least, your top five options for Cleveland Browns head coach.
Yeah, I would go John Harbaugh number one. Obviously, I think Robert Saleh would be number two. Maybe Matt Nagy number three. Oh, that it gets tougher from there, because I think a guy like, even though I kind of crapped on Kliff Kingsbury earlier, I think he would be an enticing one. And I'm trying to also, I guess, factor in what I think the Browns are going to do and what I think Andrew Berry wants to see out of this. So I could see
No,
Kliff
I
Kingsbury
want
going up
your
there.
take, not what the Browns will probably do. I
But
want your favorite top five.
that top five is so hard to put together. If I had to, and I don't want this to come back and crucify me later on in some sort of thing, but since you're putting me on the spot, I will go number one Harbaugh, number two Salah, number three Matt Nagy, number four we'll go Joe Brady as a young
Oh,
upstart, and well, no, we'll flip Joe Brady and Jeff Hafley. I am really high on Jeff Hafley. I would love for him to be our coach if we're going that route. So we'll go Jeff Hafley. We'll go Joe Brady.
okay. Interesting. So my top 5 would be John Harbaugh, of course, number 1. Mike McDaniel for me is actually number 2, and I know we disagree there. Number 3 for me would be Robert Saleh. 4 would probably be Mike McCarthy. And then 5, I would go, Kliff Kingsbury.
No, Pete Carroll, Deion Sanders, none of those names.
No, the geriatric squad, Bill Belichick, you could add to that list. No, I do not. We had those names as a potential, like, more funny graphic, and I'm like, I'm not wasting my time even putting that together because that doesn't make any sense. I will say that I am a Pete Carroll fan. Hated him when he was at USC, loved him when he was at the Seahawks, having family out there and kind of rooting for them as a tertiary team because the Bills are my second team. But I do like Pete Carroll. The game's passed him by. He's like 80 at this point. And that's not an exaggeration. Like he's extremely old. But no, those would be my top 5. Again, I'm looking for experience more than anything. And I think I kind of go in order. We did both leave out a name, which I think is interesting because I don't think he's a good fit for head coach, and that's one Todd Monken, despite having a lot of experience.
I would actually put him up there above like a Joe Brady. Now that I'm thinking about it, he kind of skipped over because he fits the experience, he fits the offensive side of the ball. I think he's had great offensive uh, output in terms of what he's done with the Ravens and having different types of quarterback structures throughout his time. So maybe giving him a rub and a chance would be something I like more than a Joe Brady. So I'd put him actually in my top five now that you're reminding me. So there's a lot to break down.
Interesting.
There's a lot to look at here. It'll be interesting to see what the Cleveland Browns continue to do. The Ravens just asked Jim Schwartz for an interview. I think that was maybe some retaliation for us for going after Todd Monken. So there's plenty of things going on here. There's still going to be plenty of time and probably plenty of more names that will be brought up in terms of the NFL as a whole and their coaching searches.
Let me ask you one final question before we wrap this up. and that is related to one John Harbaugh. He's number one for both of us. There's obvious reasons here. We're going to talk tomorrow to a collaborator that is a big Ravens fan, so he can give us better perspective on what they're seeing on their end with this firing of John Harbaugh. But a lot of the feedback has been, first of all, there's been a lot out there pushed by our own media of what he wants, and it's been proven factually incorrect. But there is some notion that he wants more control over the roster. Some fans, some Raven fans, believe that John Harbaugh was mainly successful because he worked under some really good general managers and team constructors over there for Baltimore. What's your take on that? Because we know he's had issues with clock management, things like that in game. I do think he's a good head coach and a good leader for the record, but I'm curious your take if is our structure gonna be a letdown if we hire John Harbaugh?
I don't know. That's a broader question that I think could be answered if he was brought in here. I think John Harbaugh is a brilliant NFL mind. I don't think you're a Hall of Fame caliber coach without being a brilliant football mind. So to me, I think that there's still a really solid chance that even if he has some hands on, and I think coaches always should have some hands on the roster control and what they want to see and who they want to bring in, who they want to move, blase, blah. I don't think that is going to be a detriment to this team. But our collab tomorrow with Clay Train of Talking About It podcast will be very interesting to dig into deeper and see what he thinks.
And on that note, the debate never ends, but the show does for now. We'll see you next time.